Okay, general elections poem, 1951 to 1997. It's a poem about the British general elections between 1951 and 1997 and was written to support the A-level British history option. In the election of 1951, the popular vote, Clem Attlee won. Yet Churchill got to be PM, as the Tories got more seats than Clem. Labour were tired after many long years, serving Churchill with blood, sweat and tears, then winning their landslide at the war's end, fulfilling the promise that Beveridge had penned. The war had been costly, along with welfare. Austerity, rationing left voters bare of comforts and cars and other nice stuff. The voters had few and were in a huff. So Churchill was back until 55. When Eden took over, he looked more alive. An election was held the very same year. The popular support for the Tories was clear. The votes received nearly 50%, confidence shown for the money they spent on houses and tax cuts and rationing's close. A divided Labour no problem did pose. For Attlee was old and his party divided, when Gateskill and Anna and Bevan collided, on just how left-wing their party should be, and charging for teeth and how well we see. The Conservative Party continued to win, when after 4 years Supermac got back in. The people had never had it so good. Consumer goods helped the Tories who stood. But in 1960 the Tories did falter, as leadership changes led voters to alter. Wilson dynamic against Toff Douglas Hume helped to ensure Tory government doom. The economy faltered and Labour now whole led Wilson to get to his premier goal. Promising planning and techno's white heat meant that his party now had Alec beat. Back to the people just 2 years hence, getting a bigger majority made sense. The plans in the works, the people were told. A 100-seat win left Heath out in the cold. Labour made Britain a much fairer place, trying to end unfair treatment of race. Fair pay for women and freedom for gays. All prisoners got to see out their days. Yet the shelving of the national plan, alongside a clever campaign that Heath ran, Wilson had failed with in place of strife, his government hewn by electoral scythe. Devaluation had cost Labour dear, even though its success was evidently clear. Wilson lost some of his leadership shine, ranting against unions suited Ted Heath just fine. Conservatives back at the start of the decade, backed by Heath's pledges so carefully made. Yet U-turns, divisions and impact of war would see him lose office in 74. No lamed up funds, said Edward Heath's voice, until the collapse of the ships and Rolls-Royce. Industrial relations, an act and a court could not win the TUC help that he sought. But worse was to come with the Yom Kippur War. Defeat left the Arab states feeling quite sore. Oil costs shot to considerable heights. The miners now had Edward Heath in their sights. They demanded more wages and demanded some more. Their strike left the nation energy poor. State of emergency with 3-day week left Ted Heath's chances looking quite bleak. Yet 74 was to see 2 elections as voters polarised in 2 different directions. Heath got more votes but Labour more seats, the second of Heath's 3 election defeats. The third came along just a few short months later when Wilson sought a majority greater. He succeeded but to a minute degree. Seats over all others amounted to 3. By 79 Wilson was gone. Labour now had a minority of 1. The Lib Lab pact died and they lost the support of nationalist parties, Callaghan's last resort. The election result in 79 saw Labour's support go into decline. The IMF loan and strike discontent meant Callaghan's time in office was spent. The Tories claimed that Labour's not working. Industrial unrest was plainly still lurking. So Britain elected a woman PM who began her campaign to divide us and them. In the run-up to 1983, the SDP looked on with glee. Unemployment figures had reached a great height. Thatcher's recession was starting to bite. Her ratings were reaching an all-time low. The fires from the riots were starting to glow. The voters were ready to show Maggie the door. when along came one very fortunate war. The Falklands invaded, Britain would fight, to show to the world that she still had her might. Port Stanley captured, our heroes return. Was it enough, another term for to earn? There were other reasons why Thatcher stayed put. An obvious one being Labour's Mike Foot. The scruffy old man to the left seemed to slide, with the manifesto noted as suicide. When the electoral polling had stopped, Thatcher's support from the voters had dropped, but the Alliance's challenge had split Thatcher's foes, increasing her seats despite Britain's woes. By the time the '87 election was due, Maggie's fortunes were of a quite different hue. The miners defeated, the shares all sold off, deregulated bankers with champagne to quaff. A rebate from Europe, council homes sold. Market forces are working, Maggie would scold. The tabloids backed Thatcher, increasing her poll. The owners were richer, they preferred dole, not coal. A landslide election and this one her own. Her opponents' divisions meant their chances were blown. But Labour was stronger with Kinnock as head. The SDP's chances of winning were dead. By the time we get to 1992, Thatcher's leadership was through. Her poll tax plans and tyranny led to cabinet coup and conspiracy. For many, the most surprising thing is that John Major's Tories secured a win. Under Thatcher, they were going to lose, but Major offered different views. He went round towns on his soapbox, a simple style that seemed to Fox. Neil Kinnock with his Sheffield gloating that may have cost him at the voting. So Major secured 5 years more, in time for Tories to start civil war. Back to basics brought more unease, with government ministers caught up in sleaze. When Britain crashed out of the ERM, Major lost the key to number 10. Economic strife and interest pains gave New Labour easy gains. John Smith, a Scotsman with no hair, was then replaced by Tony Blair. Youthful, fresh-faced, popular in Surrey, and not known for shagging Edwina Currie. With Aitken jailed for taking a bribe, and many a minister with a bit on the side, the Labour Party won by more than anyone since before the war.